Weekly edition of our Cranio family vlog, where we invite you to sit down with a stiff drink, curl up, and we'll chat about how our week went. So this week we are still recovering from the illness that is sweeping through so many different homes and so many of our friends, and it's just wrecking shop on everyone. So yet again, another video without my beautiful bride, so I apologize to all those of you that have to look at my mug for a few minutes this week, but my wife's been doing her best to try to get some content out there, but she's been pretty leveled. So let's kind of talk about that. So I was tested for the flu from multiple strains 2 different times on 2 different occasions, and it came back negative. However, I have a halfway decent medical background, and I know that when you have signs and symptoms of something, and you then see signs and symptoms of those who you are in close proximity to that are replicating what you have already had, that means that what you have can be transferred from one person to another. And a sinus infection, as much as they'd like for you to believe otherwise, cannot be given to another person. So where I was diagnosed with a severe sinus infection, it actually turns out it probably was the flu. Last week I spent some time recovering from what I'm calling Dad Flu 2.0, because a whole bunch of dads got sick after Dad 2.0. It's kind of a yearly thing. We're kind of used to it by now. There's a lot of mocking that goes on, but it is what it is. And as I was recovering and finally getting ready to go back to work, I happened to notice that my kids had runny noses and coughs that sounded awfully familiar to what I had been going through. And they just weren't themselves. So I did the best I could, and I made it to work barely on Monday and mostly on Tuesday, knowing that my kids were home sick. And I came home on Tuesday, and my wife she didn't look like she felt well. We went to bed, and she had cold sweats all night, and woke up on Wednesday morning, and she actually asked me to stay home, which my wife really never asked me that, because she knows that I take my responsibility as my job very seriously. It's the way that I'm able to provide for our family and give us the freedom to do things like YouTube and have my wife be able to homeschool. And so I stayed home, and I kind of regret not bringing my laptop home from work, because that way I wouldn't have gotten so far behind. But it was more important for me to be the dad and the husband that I know that I am. And when called upon to, help take on the house and let my wife try to recover, I will say, for those of you out there that are not the stay-at-home parent, it is incredibly humbling to have to be put into that position. I like to think that I can kind of take care of my family from time to time when asked to do so, but for a couple of days straight, it was really hard. I think the only saving grace that we had was the fact that my wife had already decided a while back that this would actually be the week that she was taking off from homeschooling. So I didn't have homeschooling to worry about, but that really wasn't much of a saving grace. I still had diapers and clothes and playtime and cleaning up and lunches and dinners and breakfast and getting the kids to bed and bathing the kids, while my wife was trying to recover from a sinus infection. Again, it definitely was the flu. And for all those who we've been in contact with, I apologize if you received it from us. We really didn't think that what we had was contagious, but we're finding out otherwise. I did spend some time putting on my anthropology hat. For those of you that don't know, I went to school for anthropology in Pennsylvania, and I took what I called field notes, and that was my way of adding some comic relief to experiencing the time of me being at home as a essentially stay-at-home dad. And a lot of you loved it, a lot of you liked it, and had a lot of comments, and that was awesome. For me, it was just a release. It was me trying to poke fun at the situation and to take a step back and say, by putting this hat on, I'm realizing that I'm trying to look at it from a different lens and wanting to do something a little bit fun and a little bit different. But it definitely was encouraging, some of the remarks that I got back on Facebook, so thank you for those. Now, I spent a couple days taking care of my family, and then went back to work for a grand total of one more day. I went to work on Friday, and I wound up only being able to work about a half day because I needed to get home. Katie still wasn't fully recovered. The kids were definitely still sick. And when I say kids, I mean all three of them. So we had Zoe, who is extremely tough, and she fakes it the best that she can, but you can tell when she's not herself. She's she's more withdrawn than normal. David was very cuddly, and I don't mind that because he usually cuddles with me, and that's my chance to hang out with my little dude. Jacob, we thought maybe it was just teething, and then the booger started, and the coughing, and the intense need to be cuddled, which, again, we don't mind, but when you have three kids that are doing that under the age of 5, and one parent is down and out for the count with the flu, it's a lot. But we still try to get some stuff done. Katie did shoot some video that she's going to post later this week about the gardening that we have started. For those of you that have been following along with me for a while, I did this thing called Daddy Gardens, and I'm doing it again this year. We're doing it a little bit bigger, and we're going to talk about what it's like to garden and the importance of teaching your kids how to garden, what to grow, when to grow it, how to cultivate, and what to do with it, because it's a great way to save a little bit of money, and we don't know where things are going to go in the next decade or so. And I'd rather my kids have the skills of hunting, fishing, and gardening to help sustain themselves and their families just a little bit, because, like I said, we don't know what's going to happen. So we're continually trying new things. We're making things a little bit bigger. We're trying some different methods out just to make sure we can understand what works really well for our climate here. So we did a little bit of that this weekend, a little bit of landscaping, cleaned out the gutters finally, because we had a bunch of 70-degree weather followed by a hailstorm here in Virginia, go February. So, we got a lot of stuff done that we could while people were recovering. It definitely wiped us out consistently. In fact, we're shooting this video really late tonight just because the kids were so wound up and not wanting to go to sleep, and I just didn't have it in me to fight anymore. I just had, rung the bell, put their hand up, and called them the victor. However, they're in bed, they're asleep, and Katie is recovering a little bit more, so hopefully I'll be able to go to work tomorrow. But that's been our week. It's been a mess. It's been a lot of diapers, a lot of boogers, a lot of changing of clothes, a lot of frustration, and a lot of humbling. So I'm really looking forward to a fresh start to a new week. Katie's going to get back on the saddle for homeschooling this week. That's coming up. And she has some stuff going on for MOPS, and I have a entire week's worth of work to get caught up on in very few days to make it happen. But it is what it is. We have some cool things we're hoping to do here in our YouTube studio, also known as Daddy's Office, that we're going to try to get done, and a few other things that we want to do outside this weekend if the weather holds. But that's it. That's kind of where our week has been. That's kind of where we've been. We've been here. Dealing with sick kids and a sick wife and a recovering husband who has been sick. And we didn't have the flu. We had a sinus infection. Whatever. It was the flu. So hopefully more regular content will start coming out. We appreciate you guys hanging in there. And I do still have a Cranio Minute for this week because of something that happened today. You would think that with the amount of time that we spent inside that we wouldn't have a lot of effect from the outside forces. However, we're trying to be a little thrifty, and Carter's had a pretty decent sale, and my daughter is in need of leggings. And I think the worst thing that my wife could ever do is tell me my daughter is in need of something, because I'm so wrapped around her little finger that I will buy her the moon if I can. I'll find some way to make it happen. So we loaded up the kids, and we went out, and we went to Carter's, and we got there as the doors opened, and we had a blast. We got a whole bunch of leggings for Zoe. We got some overalls for David. We got some onesies for Jacob. It was just a lot of fun. And, watching the kids run around the store was frustrating and good because of how this week has been. However, there's something really heartbreaking that happens as a Cranio parent much more in our case than many others, and we get that. And so this is coming from our point of view and from our space. But I was standing in line with Zoe, and Katie had taken David and Jacob out to go ahead and get them in the van. And I saw something all too familiar that just kind of, it shatters me. My daughter is always super happy and super, out there and outgoing. She comes by it honestly. She is just so full of love and so full of life. And, she was playing in line. She was showing me stuff. She was giving me kisses. And I looked around, and as a Cranio parent, there's this thing that you notice. And you notice the way that other kids look at your kid. And more often than not, it's out of fear. It's a lot of unknown. And kids are not good at hiding their thoughts or their emotions. And that's part of why they're so pure. That's part of why I never get angry with children who kind of look at my daughter and go, oh, what's this? Because adults don't do that. They look at a child, and in an instant they know, oh, I can't make any faces. What if I upset the parents? I need to play it cool and just let it be. But kids will sit there and they'll turn their heads and they'll look at her and they'll try to figure out, why does Zoe look different? So that's one part of the really difficult part of the social aspect of being a Cranio parent, is watching the way other children react to your child based on the way they look. Zoe has nothing to do with the way that she looks. She picks her clothes and she does her hair, but her face looks different, and I think it's beautiful. But it's not her fault, and I can't just sit there and tell the kids, it's not my daughter's fault she looks this way, because then I feel awkward as the old man who is talking to children who aren't mine about my child. But usually parents will try to engage us, and we'll talk to them about that. But the coolest thing that happened, and I've seen this happen a few times outside of our church, but I've seen it happen ever so little that it stuck with me today. And, I'm looking at these 4 or 5 kids that are just kind of looking at Zoe and going, wow, what's this? And this little tiny girl comes up. She's about a head taller than Zoe, so that means she could be the same age, maybe about a year older. And she doesn't even look at me. She just looks right at Zoe. She goes, hi, my name's Angelica. What's yours? And I wanted to cry. I absolutely did. This cute little girl just stuck her hand out to give Zoe a handshake, and Zoe kind of stuck close to me, and I looked at Zoe, and Zoe looked at me, and I looked at the little girl, and I said, hi, Angelica, this is Zoe. Zoe said hi to Angelica, and Zoe very timidly stuck her hand out and shook her hand and said hi, and she just said that she wanted to say hi, and it was nice to meet her, and she walked away. So I guess that's the counterpoint to the negativity that I sometimes feel when other kids look at my daughter, is that there's these brilliant little shining moments, these beautiful little kids who have hearts of gold, who don't care, who just want to say hi, and they're not scared, they're not intimidated, and they see something in Zoe that maybe I see every day, and maybe that's the love, and maybe that's the hope. So there's some really hard parts of being a Cranio parent, and a lot of times it's stuff that's completely out of our control, and that's where we are for our little Cranio corner. So with that, I'm trying to shoot this video in one take because I'm ready to get to bed. I want to make sure that I can get some sleep before we wake up to more crying, and hopefully no more fevers and fewer boogers and fewer messy diapers, and my kids can just get some rest and Katie can get some rest, so that way we can hit the ground running for next week. Thanks for hanging in there. You should see some things pop up about subscribing to our channel. Please follow along. Also, don't be afraid to check out our blog at craniofamilyblog.com. We're a little bit behind on posting, but we're starting to get back into the swing of things. Again, we've been sick for about 2 weeks, so hang in there. But follow along on our blog. Our intent is that these videos, that when we post them on Monday, we'll already have a blog that will correlate and go a little bit further into the story to where we can continue on the conversation there. So check out our blog, and also another screen should pop up with some videos we think you might like. Thanks for stopping by, and we'll see you all next week.